Welcome to the Clone Your Clothes bonus masterclass. Thank you so much for buying my book, Clone Your Clothes. And in this little session, I'm going to talk to you about one of the things you need to do before you start cloning your garment, and that is analysing your garment. So when you use a sewing pattern, you're going to be used to having a little set of diagrams that show you all the pieces that you need to make that garment. You're also going to have a set of sewing instructions, and when you clone a garment, you need to make these for yourself. So the first step is looking at your garment or garment analysis. So I'm wearing a shirt which is a clone of this green shirt in the book. Now when I'm wearing this shirt, I can feel I have collar. I've got this flappy bit down the front which is called a button stand. I've got two arms. Cuffs are at the end of the sleeves, and when I look at this sleeve, I can see that there is a seam down the back, so you might be able to see it on me. So this is a two-part sleeve, so this is going to inform how I make I've called it a pattern map. So a pattern map is literally like you see in a sewing pattern. It's a set of kind of lists of shapes and everything that you need to clone or make a pattern for. So once you've kind of analysed that, in the shirt example, there is a two-part collar, because not only is there this bit here, there's an inner part of the collar stand. I've then got a yoke, and that is only at the back, but it's hidden, all the seams are hidden, which means I need two of those. So what you're going to need for your garment analysis is a notepad to write everything down, pencil to record everything, and then something to measure with, because we're going to take a few measurements. So once you've got all of that together, I'm going to start by making a note of those items that I need to clone. So I've got collar and then collar stand. And then next to all of the little pieces, I know I need to cut two of these collars to put times two, and I know that I need to cut two of these stands, so put times two. And then I have this sleeve which is in two parts, so sleeve under times one. You only need one pattern piece for this, and you go through all the various elements of your pattern. So once you've got your pattern mapped down, the next thing to do is to take some key measurements, because we're going to need to cross-reference some of our measurements with our pattern once we've cloned it. So important things to note: when I look at this shirt, I can see I have buttonholes and buttons. I need to know how many buttonholes and buttons, because the sewing pattern would tell you that, and you need to make a note of that for your sewing pattern. So count how many buttonholes there are. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then make a note of that in your notepad. And if I've got 8 buttonholes, then I would need 8 buttons. But I also have a cuff. And on my cuff, I've got a buttonhole, and I've also got a button. So check that these are the same size. They're not always. So that's where our measuring tool comes in. So that's 1 centimetre. So these are the same. So I don't just need 8 buttons, I actually need 10. And make a note of that in your notepad. Other key measurements that are important to sort of look at are things like our button stand, which is this front edge here. How wide is that? So take a measurement. So that is 3 centimetres, because when we come to do our pattern later, we want to double check all these measurements, and then make a note of that in your notebook. 3 centimetres button stand. Okay. And then you might also want to take a little measure of your buttonholes and then note that in your book. So you work your way around your garment methodically, taking any measurements that might be important. For example, when you make a pattern for a cuff, we're going to just use the measurements off of the cuff to make a pattern. So I might just look at how deep that is, and then I'd use a tape measure to work out how long it is, and then mark that down in your book. So this stage is really going to help you later on, so that you make sure you've cloned all the pattern pieces you need for your garment, along with all those little details that will help you sew it together. One other thing we might want to think about looking at is any openings. So for example, on this sleeve, you can see that there is an opening between here and here before the cuff to allow that to open. Take a measurement of that and then note that down in your book. And then the final thing I would look at on a shirt like this would be the hem. So if I bring the hem up, you can see it's a narrow hem. So again, make a note of what type of hem this is. It's a narrow, double folded hem, because can you see that there's no overlocking, no zigzagging, it's all neatly encased. So I would then also take a little measurement of this, times that by 2 because it's been folded twice, and then mark that down in my notebook. So it's a real methodical little exercise, and it's going to set you up for success when you come to clone your garment. In the Clone Your Clothes book, at the beginning of every project chapter, there is a sample garment analysis, so you can see the kinds of things you should be looking at. So this is the shirt project, and you can see it's made up of a lightweight woven linen. So that's again something to note in your notebook. What kind of fabric is it made of? And then all of the different kind of measurements and notes that I noted in my notebook are all down here. It's also given me a little kind of toolkit guide, all the things you might need to make this shirt. And then towards the back of the book, I've given you a worksheet. Now, in this worksheet, I've given you an example. So it's the shirt example. And you can see where I filled this in just to help you fill yours in. And then on this side of the page is a photocopyable blank worksheet that you can use for your projects at home. So there's a space for you to add your own little diagram, and then you've got the pattern map. So those are all the pieces you've identified that you need to make a pattern for, along with some things you can write down, like what the fabric was, how much fabric you think you're going to need, and there's a chapter in the book that tells you how to work that out, along with some key construction methods that you think you've identified looking at this shirt. So in the shirt, for example, that might be the bagging out of the yoke or the burrito method. And then a little section here where you can fill in all the supplies you're going to need. So maybe you look at your stash, see what you can use there, and then maybe you might want to write yourself a little shopping list. So this is a blank, fillable version for you to use over and over, along with a sample that's been filled in for you to get an idea of what to look out for. So now you can see why garment analysis is a really important first stage for successful pattern planning.